Social media giant Meta sent shockwaves through Australian newsrooms last week, announcing it wouldn't renew deals to pay for Australian content on its platforms. The federal government's lashed the move, saying it's not the Australian way. It's pushing to bring the company back to the negotiating table before the 3-year deal expires. So, where will it leave other local companies advertising on Facebook and Instagram? Joining me now is advertising executive Adrian Falk. So, Adrian, this could have broader implications than just the news media industry.
That's right. Good afternoon, Simon, and thank you so much for having me. Yes, Meta, the parent company behind Facebook and Instagram, is rumoured to be saying farewell to its Australian news agreements, which are going to cost Australian newsrooms a whopping $70 million. Now, these agreements were brokered 3 years ago under the Morrison government, and it's going to have long-lasting effects, essentially, with jobs, particularly in the regional areas. Now, what prompted these, negotiations to be backfired was the fact that Meta announced late last week that only 3% of its audience in Australia and the US engage with news content on its newsfeed. And in fact, in the last year alone, 80% of people have stopped using its Australian News tab, which gives a roundup of news stories each day. So you're probably thinking, what is going to actually happen to the interface of Facebook here in Australia? Well, for next month, the Australian News tab will no longer be in existence here in Australia and also in the US as well. Now, Facebook has also said, though, stopped short of saying that unlike what happened during the negotiations 3 years ago, Australian news sites will still be able to post news stories and links to its content. But as we know, Simon, with the algorithm, what effect that actually has, will people actually be able to see this content in their news feed where we have to wait and see ultimately?
Yeah, we'll wait and see whether there's a designation from the government which could ultimately force Meta into paying for this type of content. What's the government weighing up here?
Yeah, well, in the last year alone, Facebook generated $5 billion from the Australian audience alone in terms of advertising revenue. So then if Facebook pulls out, then also Google, where does that come into play? Does that give its capability to then stop licensing news agreements as well? And then it becomes a slippery slope ultimately for these companies to literally throw their weight around and use media content on their platform, which ultimately they're making money from, despite them saying not many people engage with their news content.
Do you think the government should also be looking into the broader business affairs of companies such as Meta? I know our business editor, Ross Greenwood, was pointing out to viewers yesterday that some of these deals were actually done with Meta's subsidiary in Ireland as opposed to its Australian operations. Now, that may be an attempt to avoid high corporate tax rates. Is that something that could be a surprise? That's a surprise to you at all?
No, not at all. You know, with corporate tax rates in Ireland around 12.5% versus Australia's tax rates, more than double, it's no surprise at all that these deals are all brokered through Ireland. And Singapore, I think their office is based in, so Google's based in Singapore. The thing is, it's all about how they can do tax minimization, obviously legally. But ultimately, does this mean advertisers will pull out of Facebook? And will Australians turn away in droves? Well, it's interesting because if you look at the research, what's happened in Canada, where they've actually pulled news content, year on year, Canadians are actually still engaging with Facebook even more. And I feel like if there's always an audience for Facebook advertisers here in Australia, they'll be continuing to throw money at it. But ultimately, Australian newsrooms and jobs are at stake. As our Communications Minister, Michelle Rowland, said, it's definitely a blow to Australian media industry.
Yeah, no doubt. Adrian Falk, do appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Simon.